You and I likely share a love for music, but within our enjoyment, we sometimes run into a timeless debate, separating art from the artist. When you discover something terrible about a band you love, do you still listen to them or stop entirely? Today, as we explore these stories, I'll let you be the judge. Sid Vicious, Sex Pistols. Gifted the name from bandmate Johnny Rotten after a biting incident from his pet hamster Sid, short for Sid Barrett, Sid Vicious was known for being a punk rock poster child and the bass guitarist for English punk rock band the Sex Pistols.
I am an antichrist. I am an anarchist.
Their first and only album, Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, would debut at number 1 on the UK album charts. Although being propelled into the limelight, tensions strained in the band, leading to the implosion and breakup of the Sex Pistols in 1978. Following the breakup, Sid and his groupie-turned-girlfriend Nancy Spungen were settled in New York. On October 12, 1978, following a party in their room at the Chelsea Hotel, Nancy Spungen was found dead from a stab wound to the abdomen. The murder weapon was identified as a Jaguar K11 hunting knife, a gift Spungen granted Vicious a few days prior. The two were said to have an infatuation with knives throughout their relationship. Sid was then arrested and confessed to Spungen's murder. Numerous times he changed the story, claiming he remembered nothing, she fell on the knife, or that he stabbed her but never meant to kill her. Released on $50,000 bail, Vicious didn't last long in the outside world. Said to have an unaliving pact with Nancy, just 4 months later, he overdosed on heroin in Manhattan, New York. To this day, the murder of Nancy Spungen is still speculated. Rick James. Rick James was an American singer, songwriter, and record producer who is considered a legend within the world of funk.
She's a super freak, she's super freaking now.
By the 1990s, after a prospering solo career of over a decade, James was severely addicted to cocaine. He admitted to spending about $7,000 per week on drugs for a 5-year stint. On August 2, 1991, James and his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi were arrested on charges of holding 24-year-old Frances Alley hostage for up to 6 days, tying her up, forcing her to perform sexual acts with them, then burning her legs and abdomen with the hot end of a crack cocaine pipe during a week-long drug binge. James faced a maximum life sentence in prison if convicted of all charges, which included assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated mayhem, torture, forcible oral copulation, false imprisonment, and kidnapping. On November 3, 1992, while out on bail for the incident, high on cocaine, he assaulted music executive Mary Sauger at Sunset Tower in West Hollywood. Sauger said she met James and Hijazi for a business meeting. The two then kidnapped and beat her over a 20-hour period. After being tried, James was convicted for all charges but torture, which adjusted the life sentence to a mere 5 years. Cocaine is definitely a hell of a drug. Boy George, Culture Club. George Allen O'Dowd, otherwise known as Boy George, is an English singer-songwriter and DJ who rose to stardom as the lead of the English new wave band Culture Club. On December 5, 2008, Boy George was convicted for assault and false imprisonment of Auden Carlson, a Norwegian model and male escort. Carlson initially had met Boy George through a photography session. In their next meeting, Carlson claimed that he had been handcuffed to a wall fixture and repeatedly beaten with a metal chain. Boy George made statements that only the handcuffing portion of the story was true. Defense counsels presented the effect of his long-term drug use with substances such as heroin and cocaine a factor into the actions that were carried out on Carlson. On January 16, 2009, Boy George was sentenced to 15 months imprisonment for these offenses. He was given early release after 4 months on the 11th of May, 2009. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis was an American pianist, singer, and songwriter who set the rock and roll world on fire with furious control over the piano and energetic stage performances, releasing major hits like Great Balls of Fire
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
and Whole Lotta Shaking Going On.
We ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on.
Lewis is known as a major contributor and Hall of Fame member in both the rock and roll and country genres. Lewis in his lifetime was married 7 times. In 1957, at the age of 22, Lewis had his 3rd marriage with his cousin, 13-year-old Myra Gale Brown. Brown was just 14 years old when their first child, Steve Allen Lewis, was born. Tragically, Steve would lose his life by drowning in a swimming pool at the age of 3. Lewis's drug addiction, alcoholism, abuse, and infidelity were key factors in pushing a straining marriage over the edge. By 1970, Brown would go on to file a divorce. In the court filings, she alleged that Lewis had threatened to hire operatives to throw her into a river and to attack her with acid, further stating, "I was subject to every type of physical and mental abuse imaginable." The oncoming years would bring a pattern of mysterious deaths associated with Lewis's wives. His 4th marriage, to Jaren Elizabeth Gunn Pate, occurred in 1971. Pate gave birth to their child Lori Lee Lewis in 1972. It wouldn't take long before the same patterns reared their head in subsequent years to follow. The couple would have a volatile cycle of separating, getting back together, suing each other for divorce, getting back together, separating, and trying for divorce again. As the divorce settlement was on the cusp of coming to a close in 1982, Pate would soon engage in discussing the financial terms of the separation. Unfortunately, these discussions would never be finalized, as her body was found in a swimming pool at the home of a friend in Collierville, Tennessee. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning. 1 year later, Lewis would marry Shawn Stevens. The marriage, off to a rocky start, had incidents of domestic violence, paired with Lewis pressuring Stevens to engage in intercourse between the couple and her sister. 77 days after their wedding, Stevens was found dead in their home from a methadone overdose. Heavy bruising was found on her body, with blood on her hair, hands, and fingernails, as well as the surrounding furniture. A first responder noted that there were fingernail-type claw marks on Lewis's hand. Despite this, Lewis denied and was never tried for any involvement in the death of Shawn Stevens. Steve Albini, Big Black. Steve Albini was an American musician and audio engineer. He's primarily known for being the singer and guitarist of the influential post-hardcore and noise rock band Big Black, as well as being the audio engineer for staple albums like Surfer Rosa by the Pixies, In Utero by Nirvana, and Rid of Me by PJ Harvey. In the winter of 1988, Albini was interviewed along with Big Black. Published in Forced Exposure, an independent music magazine out of Boston, Massachusetts, Albini discusses his enjoyment for the contents of a nude magazine purchased in Hamburg, Germany, containing 12 to 13-year-old children engaging in sexual acts. I'm not going to mention the excerpts in further detail because I find the quotes to be disgusting. In Forced Exposure's summer issue of 1985, Albini also talked about the enjoyment and promotion of his lifelong friend Peter Sodas' magazine Pure, which contained the same sexual content with even younger children. He was later convicted for producing and distributing this type of media. Albini also had a reputation for being very edgy and vocal throughout his life, often bursting with blatantly racist, homophobic, or transphobic statements in songs, band names, or quotes directly. Richard Wagner. Richard Wagner was a German composer, theater director, essayist, and conductor, most famously known as being the composer behind Ride of the Valkyries. Wagner popularized the concept of Gesamtkunstwerk, or total work of art, where multiple forms of art such as music, painting, architecture, and poetry culminate together, forming a complete work. Wagner, being a prolific writer, published multiple essays in his lifetime, one in particular titled Judaism Within Music. Here, Wagner takes an anti-Semitic stance, claiming the Jewish do not contribute to the development of music, but degrade it. Further, he argues that while Jewish artists may achieve technical proficiency in the field of music, their works ultimately fail to resonate deeply with the spirit of true artists. Wagner ultimately criticizes Jewish culture, artistic taste, and economic prowess. As he aged, he further supported racialist philosophies, such as scientific race theory, or being against the marriage or mixing of superior and inferior races. Seen as a German nationalist, Wagner's work, both literary and musically, were well adopted in Nazi Germany. Born 6 years after Wagner's death, Adolf Hitler was an admirer of Wagner's music and saw his operas as an embodiment of Hitler's vision for Germany, often leveraging Wagner's anti-Semitic excerpts for use in Nazi propaganda, as well as playing Wagner's music at Nazi events. Wagner is still used to this day as a symbol of German nationalistic views. Varg Vikernes, Burzum. Varg Vikernes is a Norwegian musician and author, best known for being a prominent member in the second wave black metal scene, the sole member of black metal / dungeon synth band Burzum,
This is wow.
and the main Arson of multiple churches throughout Norway as revenge against Christianity, who established the churches to suppress Norse paganism. At the time, Oystein Arseth, or Euronymous of Mayhem, owned Helvete, a record store and label headquarters in Oslo, Norway. Helvete was also the main hangout spot for other members of the scene. Euronymous coined his group of friends the Black Circle, a name he created to drive reputation for core members of the black metal community in Norway. He perceived himself as the leader of this group, but as Vikernes began to gain more notoriety with his peers for setting fire to churches, tensions rose and caused a perceived power struggle in the group. Rumors among select members of the group circulated that Euronymous planned to lure Varg into the forest, stun him with an electroshock weapon, tie him up, and torture him to death while videotaping his acts. When this was relayed to Vikernes, he took the threat very seriously. On the night of August 10th, 1993, Vikernes met with Euronymous to handle business surrounding an unsigned contract. There he would stab Euronymous over 20 times in an ongoing struggle. Vikernes claimed that he killed Euronymous in self-defense, as when confronted, Arseth kicked him in the chest and armed himself with a kitchen knife. Varg Vikernes was arrested just over a week later and sentenced to 21 years, the maximum sentence in Norway, for the murder of Oystein Arseth, the arson of 3 churches, the attempted arson of a 4th church, and for theft and storage of 150 kilograms of explosives. The media then used this as an opportunity to bring second wave black metal into the limelight, painting it as a militant satanic cult, despite church burnings having nothing to do with Satanism. Faust, Emperor. Faust is a Norwegian musician, best known as the drummer of symphonic black metal band Emperor. Faust was a prominent member as well in the Norwegian black metal scene. On August 21st, 1992, while visiting his family in Lillehammer, Faust, walking home from the pub, encountered Magna Andreasen, a gay man who attempted to solicit him for sex. Faust then agreed to go with him to the nearby woods in Olympic Park. It was there he would stab Andreasen 37 times. Upon returning to his hometown of Oslo, Norway the following day, he told friends Euronymous and Varg Vikernes what he had done. After Vikernes' murder of Euronymous in August 1993, Faust was arrested and confessed to killing Andreasen on impulse. He was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment. Although media took the case as means to propel Satanism, fascism, or homophobia within the black metal scene, Faust has repeatedly denied being a Satanist and having racial, fascist, or homophobic views in several interviews. Singer Gall, previously of Norwegian black metal band Gorgoroth, is an openly gay member of the scene. Gall stated that after coming out as gay, Faust was the first person to send him a message of support that he came out. In 2003, Faust was released from prison due to good behavior, serving 9 years and 4 months in his sentence. When asked about his thoughts on being incarcerated, he claimed, "It has taught me a lot about myself, my limits, my psyche, and my will. I think it is a positive thing that I was removed from the black metal scene because I was heading towards a very destructive path." In later interviews, Faust expressed his remorse for his actions in the 1990s, calling them senseless. Overall, these stories portray the negative actions of humans in our world. Whether that impacts your view of continuing to support their efforts in the music world or not is entirely up to you. If you enjoyed the video, a like or comment about your thoughts, maybe about a story that I missed, would be awesome. We drop videos every Wednesday, so I hope to see you again in the next one. I will never look at Great Balls of Fire the same way again.